I'd like to introduce Meg Bolger. Meg was first welcomed to the ActivatEE community when she was an undergrad leading wilderness orientation trips over 5 years ago. And we have thankfully been stuck with her ever since. Meg's passion in life is engaging in and helping others engage in social justice conversations, which she believes are paths to self-discovery, healing, and deep, meaningful conversations. Meg is currently living her dream as an independent educator and facilitator, working with colleges and organizations around the country, looking to start and expedite their social justice journeys, all while getting asked if she's old enough to sit in the exit row. So please help me welcome Meg Bolger.
True story, last week, 26, so I got like a decade on the exit row qualification. People keep telling me, at one point you're gonna love that you look so youthful, and I'm waiting. So I want to talk a little bit about my social justice journey. When I was listening to the keynote speaker and the Kurt Hahn address, part of me inside was going, are they gonna steal my whole Activate? And then I was like, no, like people can't hear that story enough, and I can try to do it in 8 minutes. They had an hour, we can make this happen. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my social justice journey. I'm an educator, a facilitator, and people often ask me, like, when did you get started? When did you start doing social justice work? And I like to say, about this old. I was that cute, that's really me. So I've been a social justice kid all my life. And let me tell you a story to kind of illustrate what I mean by that. If there's any kids in the room, that's often happening at AE conferences, which I love. This is a story about this guy, so you might go, na-na-na-na-na, and get, like, save their childhood. So just, spoiler alert, something's about to happen. Okay, so I was walking into a mall with my mom, and I was feeling really frustrated. I had beef with Santa. Because I was really unsettled by the distribution of presents that I was seeing on a regular basis between people in my community. And I was like, no, Mom, he's supposed to be kind of this magical dude. Like, what's with the inequality that's going on here? Like, this is serious inequity in present distribution. Santa seems a little bit like a classist asshole. I was like wondering this, and I was like, do the parents pay Santa off? Like, what's going on? Oh! I see what's going on. So that's what growing up at Meg was like. Finding out that Santa's a classist asshole. So, fast forward in my social justice journey to going to college. Now, this is not a stock photo. I really went to a place this pretty. This is Hamilton College in upstate New York. Hamilton, there's like at least 2 or 3 of you out there. There we go. So I went from being just a social justice kid to being a social justice educator. Started doing facilitations, started making goofy faces at people, and I loved this work. I loved facilitating dialogues, discussions. I was doing a lot of work around gender, around sexuality, and I thought it was so much fun. Once I had gone through most of my friend groups, gotten them to come to my workshops, I needed some other people to start coming to my workshops. And I was like, why are people just not wanting to give up 3 hours on a Saturday to come hang out with me? Like, my workshops are fun. Oh, I missed one. There we go. My workshops are fun. People look like this in my workshops. Like, it's super good time. Why are people so afraid to engage with me? Why don't they want to spend time digging into this stuff? So I started looking like this and being like, what's going on? And then I started going back to doing workshops myself as a participant. I started doing a lot of work around my whiteness. Just to let you know, I'm white, and that is a real privileged identity that I have. And I started going to race workshops, and I had a completely different experience than when I was doing workshops around my marginalized identities, around my gender, my sexuality. So I can remember one of the first times I went into a race workshop, I had a lot of thoughts all of a sudden. I was like, where do I sit? Who do I sit next to? Are they gonna think that I'm sitting next to them to like prove that I'm not a racist white person? Like, what's gonna happen here? What am I gonna get asked? So I was like, okay, that's not fun. That's an unsettling experience. But I sat and I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna show up. Then the workshop started, and then my thoughts started getting really ugly. Because I was getting asked questions I had no answers to. I started getting asked, tell me about what it's like to experience race as a white person. Tell me what it's like what do you know about your privilege? And I started having all types of internal thoughts. My thoughts were, what am I doing here? I have no idea how to answer these questions. What right do I have to call myself a social justice educator and not know these things? I'm a total fraud. I'm totally wrong to do this work. Those were not fun thoughts. Those are not productive thoughts. And when I took a step back from those thoughts, what I realized was underlying a lot of those things was shame. I was going down a pretty hefty shame spiral. And this was keeping me from doing a lot of good work. It was keeping me from learning, from exploring, from understanding more about my own identity. And all of a sudden I knew why people didn't want to hang out with me for 3 hours on a Saturday to talk about their privilege. Because shame is not a fun emotion. That's something a lot of us spend a good amount of time avoiding or working through. So I knew as an educator, as somebody who wanted more people to start engaging with this work, that I needed to do something about my own shame. I needed to dig into how do I get myself out of this shame spiral and how can I help my participants get out of theirs. So I started looking for steps. And I was like, okay, what do you know, Meg, about getting out of shame? Well, I went to an old friend, this person, anybody else? Brene Brown fangirl up here. So, Brene Brown talks a lot about shame, and she talks a lot about how to move through shame, and I started looking for her for advice. First thing that Brene Brown talks about when dealing with shame is about talking to yourself like you're talking to other people. That was something really easy for me, because I had other people in mind that I could do this work with, my participants. What would you say, Meg, to your participant to help them get out of that shame spiral? I would tell them, it's okay not to know. It's okay to walk into a workshop and have no idea what you're talking about. First time we go canoeing, and none of us knew what a J-stroke was, nobody was shaming you about that. But with social justice, so many of us feel this pressure to already know the answers we've never had an opportunity to learn. So I started talking to myself like I talk to other people. It's okay not to know. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to feel a lot of guilt and shame. And then I started talking to other people about that experience. Brene Brown's second step, reach out to people. Tell them your story. Tell them how you feel. Empathy is the kryptonite to the shame. Shame cannot survive empathy. And so I wanted to share with you all this part of my journey. I wanted to share with you all this story that I have, because I believe we all have a right to feel those heavy feels when we go into a social justice workshop or any workshop. We have a right to be scared, and we have a right not to know. And I have a right to still call myself a social justice educator through all of that. There's no one way to do this. There's no one way to move forward in our own journeys. And there's no right way to show up. But I want each of us to take this time to know that shame shouldn't keep us from showing up for our work, for each other, or for ourselves.